Oh,
Good
cool.
afternoon. This
Great.
is Joe Scarice at Smart Real Estate Podcast live. First Trust Bank Senior Loan Officer, Mortgage Lending Specialist in the Residential Division. I have my two co-hosts, Joshua Pagan with Berkshire Hathaway on Damon Michael's team, as well as our social media expert and guru, Yardell Perkins, who orchestrates and puts together and sets up all the different social media platform and marketing that we have on behalf of the podcast, as well as some of our other sites such as Smart Real Estate EDU and Smart Real Estate REIA. So we have a really good speaker this afternoon. I met David 6-7 years ago. I was reaching out to Fundrise, which is a capital raising source, and said, "Hey, would you like to come up and do a speaking, at one of our events, blah, 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 blah." Like, we got somebody right on boots on the ground there that's working with us. Do you mind if we have him? And, you showed up and you did a wonderful presentation and, was very appreciative. I don't forget about that. And, since then you guys you've scaled up multifamily. You're not just the Brewery Town market anymore. You're kind of sprawled out. And why don't we just start, Dave? Why don't you introduce yourself and who you are with M&M Partners, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Well, thanks, Joe. Pleasure to be here. And you happen to work at my favorite bank, so it's also nice to be working with you today on this. It's a great bank and great people there from the top down. So my company's M&M Partners. I'm the managing partner and co-founder. Interestingly enough, we formally started the company in 2008 in the middle of the last sort of economic shitstorm that we had, and that was purposely done at the time to sort of build this at a time when there wasn't as much competition. And so our company today is really focused on two lines of business. The core is adaptive reuse, large scale projects, typically historic, opportunity zone located, historic tax credits, and sort of the more challenging the building, the better. And so we'll do 2 of these at any given time. We'll be live at different phases. And then the other part of our business is acquiring apartment buildings that have had long-time ownership, minimal, if any, investment in updating the buildings. Go in, buy these assets, reposition them in such a way you do the kitchens, bathrooms, common areas, value add deals. It's not rocket science. And that's sort of the other facet of our business as well.
So, let's talk about multifamily units. I mean, how many do you have online right now? How many do you have that are maybe like at the 20 or 30-yard line of completion where it's buttoning up? And then do you have anything in the mix that's just sitting there now because of what's going on here with the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, so today now we're approaching about 500 units online. In development right now, there's about another 250-ish, and then in pre-development, there's probably another 500. So the ones that are stabilized now, knock on wood, April was a decent month collection-wise. We had some retail tenants that we expected there to be issues, worked with them to create a way for them to get through this, a way for us to get through it. They don't get hurt, we don't get hurt, and everyone wins. On the resi side, it was really case by case. We tend not to be jerks, and we'll work it out with people. The projects under construction, we had 2, we shut them down. One we were able to get back up with waivers. Both cases, great lenders that understood the situation. I mean, obviously everyone's in the same boat. It is what it is. The stuff in pre-development is continuing down the path of pre-development. It's stuff that we weren't planning to be in the ground for another, 8 to 12 months. And so we're just sort of continuing down the path of doing A&E work, working with our lenders. And then we had a couple deals that were under agreement slated to close, and 2 we walked from, one we're continuing to do. And also sort of keeping an eye open on opportunities that may present themselves kind of when the dust settles. And, we see, you sort of see who's wearing clothes when the tide washes out, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you think COVID-19 has affected your business short term, and how do you think it's going to look like? They're talking about where we can maybe have a release May 1st, maybe June 1st. Have you set up a 90-day plan from when that release happens? Have you sat down with your partners and the people that are part of your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think first is probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago, we started realizing this would be a thing and sort of dusted off the playbook from the last downturn to sort of make sure like, hey, what's the stuff we need to be thinking about? How do we want to communicate to our investors and partners? How do we want to communicate with our tenants? First and foremost, you want to make sure you're taking care of your tenants. Secondarily, you want to make sure that you can survive this, get out the other side, and start to build value again and go on offense. And so, we were very quick to do that and be sure that we were in a position to get through this. I think coming out of it, it's because we've continued on pre-development, because our construction, one of the two jobs shut down, is restarted. The other one's ready to restart, and they were at places that were sort of, I don't want to say easy to stop, but easier to stop and then restart. That I think that when this is lifted, we should just be able to accelerate what we've been doing. We still have guys out in the field doing management and repairs as needed. We've done extra cleaning of all our buildings just to do extra, twice a day instead of once a day, and so that's how we've approached it.
So what do you think about the ongoing pandemic, and how do you think that's going to affect Philadelphia real estate as a whole? I mean, you're in a very unique market area where it's more North Philadelphia. You're not really tied into student housing really at all, right? There's not really a lot of
a little bit. We had about 140 units of it by Drexel, and in April we were at 100% collections this month.
Okay.
So we feel good about those assets. I think Philadelphia is going to hold up better than a lot of markets based on the makeup of the employers. So about 4 weeks ago, I had my team go through all of our tenant data and show me a list of every unit and show me where everyone works. And then myself and a couple others sort of just made some assumptions on who we thought potentially could be vulnerable. And what we found was very minimal exposure to hospitality and other industries that theoretically, got hit really quick. Now, the next piece is how quick can the government roll out the PPP money to employers so that they can keep people on the payroll, so that May and June are not just bloodbaths for landlords, right? So I think everyone's sort of watching that rather closely. And, you're seeing the money's starting to hit corporations' bank accounts. So that's obviously something we're keeping an eye on. And then to the extent our commercial tenants who are having difficulty, what are they doing? Are they applying for PPP? Are they applying for other grants and things of that nature? And then what are they doing to position themselves to reopen and be successful?
Were you able to go to, obviously you work with several banks within the Philadelphia market. Did you line yourself up with every one of them? Did you reach out to every one of them to set up the SBA program, or just a couple specific?
Yeah. So, I mean, specifically, we went to your guys' bank, the First Trust. We have a really nice relationship, and it's the nice thing that we've always found is, when our banker says they're going to do something, they do it. And with a program like this that was evolving and moving, we needed to go somewhere where, the answers we get are real answers. And so that for us was the logical first place to go. This new Main Street lending program, because PPE is just a very short-term Band-Aid.
Correct.
The longer term, yeah, and it's great and it's much needed. And kudos to the government. I mean, they were over this. They were all over this way faster than 08. I know people like it's not fast enough. I mean, the fact that they're passing multi-trillion-dollar legislation in weeks is pretty darn impressive. So yes, there's some hiccups getting the money out, but again, they'll get past that. But I think this Main Street lending program could be rather interesting to help jumpstart the economy back up. Rather than, this is the PPP is the Band-Aid to get you to that, and then they reopen the economy, give businesses money to expand and grow and hire more people. Things start to get pretty interesting.
So where do you see the market heading post-COVID-19 once we start opening up markets? I mean, they're trying to push May 1st. If it doesn't happen, May 15th, June 1st. Where do you see retail, especially in a lot of your properties? What's that conversation going to look like? And then residentially, what does that look like over the next 60 days?
I think retail is interesting. The question is, if you look at before this, people never ate at home. They dined out either at a restaurant or takeout, 5-7 nights a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question is, will that trend pick back up after this? Or are people going to say, hey, I didn't mind eating at home. It was kind of nice. I'm only going to eat out 2 or 3 times a week. So to the extent that you have tenants that are restaurants or QSRs or things like that, some there may not be as much demand. Who knows? Certain goods and services, I think there'll be a need for. I mean, we're lucky that our retail exposure is pretty nominal. We got about 120,000 feet of it. And, the stuff, and about 30% of it's, very high quality credit that we know is paying regardless. But I do think traditional retail, which knock on wood we're not in, is going to be in for some pain, as is obviously hospitality. I mean, hospitality, I think this whole idea of like jumping on an airplane to do a meeting for a day, maybe staying overnight and flying back home, I think that's going to end in a big way. I think, conferences and conventions that aren't major, I think people are going to stop attending those. So those things are in effect, but I think Philadelphia is well positioned. We always have been. I mean, it's always been this sort of slow and steady growth. The fact that 2 local companies are working on vaccines for this, so that we have heavy exposure to life sciences, I think is very, puts us in a unique position. On top of that, Philadelphia has done a very good job in terms of responding to this. There was a story in the Times 2 weeks ago or it was last week, that Philadelphia in early January, the health commissioner was on top of this. And, Mayor Kenny had shut the city down pretty early. So are you going to see people leaving New York City and places like that have been hit really hard, sitting here saying, maybe I should be looking down in Philadelphia, that obviously better quality of life, cheaper. Also, I'm not packed on top of each other like sardines for when the next, virus spreads throughout the world. So it'll be interesting, but I think Philadelphia is rather well positioned.
Well, economic downturns such as 2008 and 9/11 our recovery was a year ahead of most of the other capital markets. Yeah. And we didn't see the immediate hit for about 6 months. I think this is definitely a little different because it's pandemic and it's medical. But I do see a faster recovery with Philadelphia just because the buy-in is still lesser than DC or Philadelphia. I'm in New York anyway. What do you believe the rental market or new construction market will be hit harder by the pandemic? Like, do you think new construction rentals, or do you think the older rentals are going to have a struggle? Where do you think the balance is? Because I know you have a blend of a couple, projects that have our more historical renovations, and then you have true new construction. Where do you think that hit? Yeah. Where's the median?
I mean, I think that, in the last downturn, what we saw was you saw our portfolio held up well because, you need a roof over your head, and our rents are, at that time, a one bed was like $1,100 a month. Yep. It's not like that one bed's going to $700. So, that sort of product held up well. And then you have the what I would call Class A quality, but at a B location stuff. So a lot of like our conversions that we've done have the amenities, have the finishes, but, are not in the core of Center City. Well, actually, I think benefit from people who need to scale back. Say you're a salesperson and you were making $1.25 a year and you were living in a high rise downtown. All of a sudden you're not making the same money, but you still want the same nice place. You know what? You'll move 15 blocks north to the same kind of product and save $1,000 a month. I also think what'll really change is, and as a banker, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, is like, over the last 6 to 12 months, you'd open up the Inquirer or read one of the real estate like websites, and you'd see every day like a new massive project announced, not necessarily happening by someone who just had no business developing that project. Maybe they build a 4-plex and now they're trying to build a 200-unit job, and it's like, it's a scary premise. I think all that stuff goes away, which again will put a damper on supply, which is not the worst thing in the world. I also think older product will probably do fine because it's a lower rent. I do think you're going to see, it's already happening, but it's going to happen faster, is car ownership. All these younger people, who didn't have cars or maybe did, they don't need cars. Save the money. Don't have it. So I think you'll see less and less income derived from parking lots that are within within your multifamily building.
Well,
we've already started seeing that.
I mean, that's why the bicycle rage has opened up completely 100% in Philadelphia, and the L train and any of the other train stops have become obviously vital spots. I always tell people, when you want to buy an investment property, buy near a train station. I mean, that was always my theme at any of the events. I mean, your projects you have right now, there's ones that are near finished, but the pre-development, where do you think some of those, what's going to happen with those? Are you going to just put them on the shelf and just complete what you have? I mean, do you think you're going to talk to the banks to say, hey, listen, we're going to move forward on these projects, or are you going to hold off and just watch? What's that discussion?
Yeah, so we have 3 that are actively in pre-development. 2 of the 3, one is slated to close in July. It was originally supposed to close next month. We pushed it out a little bit. The tax credits, it's not a huge deal. And, we're fairly certain that, our lender will be there and we'll do that one. We have another very large one that is an OZ deal that we had started before this. And, we don't think we're in the ground for 10 months. And so we're just continuing with the pre-dev, with the architect and the design. We were rushing to get a permit in by the end of the year for the abatement because they're changing it.
Yeah.
We can have a discussion about that. My guess is that either gets punted out far or just goes away, because you're going to need every economic incentive possible to get people spending, investing dollars to build. But my sense is the December 31st implementation will likely get postponed because L&I will not be able to handle the deluge of permits that people are going to try to be getting who want to be grandfathered in under the old abatement.
Yeah, the word has it that that's probably going to get pushed.
Yeah,
definitely.
It has to.
I mean, do you think there's going to be impact on the tax credits out there? Because, I mean, tax credits to me are always historical, but do you think there's going to be a rub there with tax credits over the next year or so to recapture them? If you say you have to take a pass on this project, does that tax credit completely go away, or does it sit out there?
So if we haven't, so just say for instance, so 2 of the 3 deals that we have in pre-development are historic tax credit deals. We haven't closed on the credits yet. So there's no recapture risk. It's just, you just don't do the deal and the investor never buys the credits. So we don't run that risk. Because credit buyers are still there. They still need credits. So, at the end of the day, we take a long view to all of this. You're in the midst of 2008, 9, 10, the world's going to hell. Nothing's ever, cap rates are high, rents are low. It's hard to get deals done. It's hard to raise capital. But then, the sun shines again, and it's going to happen all over again. And so,
I think this will be a longer cycle. I think we're not going to have 5-year cycles. I think there's going to be a true next 10-year cycle of true recovery. What advice do you have for, listen, I agree with you. Amateur night is over, for a lot of the amateurs. This is for the seasoned, well-skinned, thick-skinned investor. But if somebody's going to make a move into some form of development, not maybe as large scale as what you're doing, but what advice would you give to them starting when you can get outside again and start doing things again?
First of all, now this is it. This is the time you do it. I mean, like I said in the opening, we purposely started MM Partners during the downturn because I had a couple thoughts around that. One, where there's tons of competition and it looks easy, everyone looks like a genius, right? But it's not built on reality. And there's always this fear, am I overpaying? Am I overpaying? You can never change what you pay for a property. You can always refinance it, right? You can always update it and make the kitchen nicer and the bathrooms nicer, but you can never change what you paid for it. So now is a great time for someone to come in. And I've always told people, start small. I started with a shell. I didn't come trying to do some massive big project. So start with a single family shell where if God forbid you lose, your life's not over. Maybe not that 20 grand isn't a lot of money, but maybe you lost $20,000, $30,000 or something like that. But start small, see how it all works, do another one, and maybe do 2 at once, and then maybe, move to a 4-plex or do something like that. And so I think it's a really good time to do it because it's never going to be harder. And this way it gives someone an appreciation of counting every dollar, understanding how difficult this is, and really, being methodical with and deliberate with what they're doing.
So, you've obviously have been surrounded by mentors, have been mentored over the years. What is one piece of advice that resonates in your mind today that you got from somebody that you're taking into consideration and using that moving forward right now?
Yeah. So this was about 2008, and this was when my partners and I made a decision to sort of go all in Brewery Town and effectuate a neighborhood plan. And this was a super, super, super serious private equity guy, extraordinarily successful and wealthy, who gave us some of his time. And we shared the vision and the plan with him. And he said, it makes 100% sense. Keep your heads down. execute, only take enough money out of the business to pay your mortgage, go out to dinner once or twice a week. Other than that, tune out the noise. Don't listen to anybody else. You're going to have doubters. F them. And if you do this and keep doing it over and over again, you'll be rewarded. And you know, it took time. It took a lot of getting kicked in the nuts. I mean, that's basically what this business is. It's what a lot of business is. You got to be able to get back up. And so I think that, you know, advice resonated then, and it still does today.
You know, there's one other thing that comes to mind. We met through the introduction of Fundrise, capital raising, monies for projects. What do you foresee the conversation with these capital raising groups now going forward? I mean, have you had any discussions of what their thoughts might be? Because you're part of that environment, raising capital for larger scale multifamily. So what's their thoughts, and what are they kind of translating to you, and how things are going to roll out? Is it going to be smaller scale capital raising for smaller projects, or go for the big elephant stuff?
So, you know, I think there's sort of two buckets. So the first opportunity, and we've had these discussions already with some of our investors who are mostly family offices. If there's vulture opportunities today, we're all over it, you know, is what they said. I'm not convinced you're going to see those, by the way, but, you know, to the extent you do, they're ready to write checks, big or small. I think in terms of it, as it comes to more traditional deals, I think they want to see how things are going to shake out. Are lenders still going to lend 75%? Are they going to want to go down to 65%? Are cap rates going to be in the 5s still for good multi, or are they going to be in the 6s or 7s? So I think there's just not a lot of clear direction on where underwriting will be. And then on top of that, like, what do collections look like? You know what I mean? I think April's not the true test. The true test is May and June and July. So I think you have other investors that are sort of sitting on the sidelines. And then there's interesting other forms of financing. You know, you have C-PACE financing that was recently passed in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. The rumor is R-PACE is coming this summer. And that starts to add an interesting dynamic where you're able to add, you know, 30 to 35% of your capital stack is this leasehold financing with a low leverage first, theoretically behind it, which necessitates a much smaller cash need in the deal. And so I think you're going to see more use of capital stacks that are what I'll call creative.
So how do we reach out to M&M Partners? One, in regards to rentals. Two, if we want to have a discussion about being involved in a capital raise on present or future investments, what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so we have a website, mmpartnersllc.com. And, you know, all of our emails and contact information is on there, or someone could send an email to info@mmpartnersllc.com and it'll just get routed to the right person. My email is david@mmpartnersllc.com. And interestingly enough, we've signed like 11 leases in the last 2 weeks, which it absolutely just blows my mind that
has it been medical?
That's happening.
Has it been medical, the inquiries, the rentals?
Some, but some are just people that have time on their hands or planning to move anyway. And
wow.
We put together some interesting virtual like tours, and it's crazy. I mean, I certainly would not have expected it.
Wow, that's great. Well, I'm really glad you're handling everything well. You look good. You're handling things good. You know, we're just a little older since the last time we ran into each other.
Yes.
I really appreciate
I didn't have any gray.
You know, I have no hair anymore, so it's all good. But I want to thank Josh Pagan for making this invitation to get back together on this podcast. And this will be put out on iTunes, Google Play, Liptify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook Live. Yordell will be sending you a link with Josh to send it out to your network and circle of influence. I want to thank you again, and please be safe this weekend. Try to enjoy the holiday weekend, and thank you for your time, David.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me. Take care.
Be well, and have a great weekend.
All right.